Hey guitar players, today we're going to continue on our little journey through triad pairings, understanding how we can use them in our solos and in our chord playing, and generally use them to understand more about the fretboard and music in general. Now today we're going to look at how to use this stuff over a Lydian context, so we're going to be playing over an F major 7 sharp 11 type thing. Now this video actually took me on a little bit of a journey myself as well, and I discovered some new things which we'll see a little bit later on. It's a bit of a roller coaster really. Towards the end of the video we'll relate this to something that you'll be very familiar with already as a guitar player, and hopefully that will allow you to kind of play freely over this type of context and demystify this whole modal situation in general. Now to me the whole Lydian sound just reminds me of Steve Vai. I think that's probably because when I was first learning all of this type of thing, I was massively getting into the Passion and Warfare album, as you do when you're a teenage metalhead. Stylistically, things have changed a little bit for me now, though I would still absolutely love a swirly Ibanez one day. But that's where I was back then, and this sound always has that little bit of nostalgia for me. Now in the previous couple of videos we spoke about using an F and a G triad, which is the 4 and the 5 of the parent key, C, and we used those over a G7 for a mixed Lydian sound, and then we also used it over a D minor 7 for a Dorian sound, and it worked great. It worked great over those two things. It's not the only option, but it's one of them, and the same is true with this Lydian context as well. If you play F and G and your bass player is playing F, you can really generate nicely the sound of that particular mode. As usual, you can use this stuff for both chord voicings and soloing, and you want to make sure you know all of your triad inversions all over the fretboard, everywhere. Practice them as chords and arpeggios in different directions, and then like up and down, and the other way. Now if we start soloing with those two triads, we can really start generating the sound of that F Lydian mode. As always, I've got some written resources over on my Patreon page. If you want to go and check it out, that'd be much appreciated. There's a ton of stuff building up over there now, loads and loads of different lessons and all sorts of different things that are hopefully useful. So go and check it out if you want to. Just as you could before, if you want to create some outside sounds and generate some chromaticism, you can fill in the gap there with an F sharp to create some extra tension. The next logical step is then to write all of those notes out in order. So instead of in blocks like this, put them together low to high. So F, G, A, B, C, D. And this generates a hexatonic scale, which you can then plot across the fretboard and have fun creating melodies with that too. Now I just want to quickly hop in and just let you know that I am now teaching privately on a website called Till. The link is below. Till is a really useful platform for music teachers, and it's very stable. You don't have the same audio and technical issues that you have with things like Zoom, and yeah, it's they handle booking. There's no faffing around with time zones and all that type of stuff. You just book a lesson and I call you, and happy days. Now in the previous video we started talking about pairing together different triads, not just using the 4 and the 5. The entire point of doing this in the first place is to find the most colourful notes in the scale to play. Now in a band situation, quite often we have a bass player that's playing the root note, so really we don't need that note anymore. We can avoid that note. What we can do is take what's left of the scale and we can look at different ways of organising those remaining notes. At this stage, it'd be quite fun to go and check out this book by Mick Goodrick and Tim Miller. It's awesome but dense, and it's really, really hard to break down. The first time I looked in this book, my brain melted, and I put it on the shelf for about 10 years. And kind of started looking at it again recently, and it's starting to make a little bit more sense. Now we're going to get into the specifics of this book a little bit more in a future video, or maybe a future series of videos. We'll see how things go. But Mick Goodrick is talking about this idea of generic modality compression, which is a bit of a mouthful and a bit of a brain ache, but basically what it means is you take a mode like this, F Lydian for instance, you get rid of the root note, and you look at different ways you can organise the remaining 6 notes. Now one way of dividing up those 6 notes could be with 2 triads. In this case you could use G and A minor, which we'll get to in a moment. But you could also think of different ways of doing it. What if I took like E, B and C, and then the remaining notes are G, A and D, and I pair those together like this. Now in the same way that you can invert a triad, you can also invert these shapes as well. Just by flipping them upside down, send the E up an octave, and you'd end up with this, and then you get these pairs like this. Like that, and that takes you on a whole different journey of exploring different melodic combinations of things. Like you end up with a lot of contrary motion going on in the shapes and the lines and all of that type of stuff. That's too much for one lesson. We'll dive into that properly, as I said, but there's a number of different ways that you can split up all of those different notes into 2 groups, so we'll look at that in the future. To continue with today's lesson, we're going to take that triad idea again though, and we're going to say, okay, well we've used F and G, that's kind of cool, but the F really isn't doing much for us in terms of colour. That's just the 1, 3 and 5, so it's kind of, you know, foundational. Again, we have the kind of shifting tension resolution thing, the foundation colour that we had previously, but that's not necessarily the most efficient way of generating colourful sounds in our solos. So if we look at a different pairing and we take G, which has in relation to F, this has the 9, the sharp 11 and the 13, so it's all of our colours. And then if we take the A minor of the scale as well, we've got the 3, we've got the 5, and this time we've got the major 7. So we've still got some foundation with the 3 and the 5, but we've also got the major 7 in there. So we've got a little bit more colour this time. So we can take those 2. Okay, I'm just taking a G and an A minor, G, A minor, G, A minor, and we can do all of that same stuff we did with F and G with those 2 triads. Now this is where things got really interesting for me. I wrote those notes out in order to build a hexatonic scale, and that gave me G, A, B, C, D, and E. I improvised with them for a bit, made a startling realisation pretty quickly that this is basically just A minor pentatonic, right? With the addition of one note, B. Now that's pretty much one of the first scales that you learn on the guitar, right? Maybe you start with E minor pentatonic on like day 1 or 2. And then maybe next week or something you learn Highway to Hell or something like that, and then you get your A minor pentatonic stuff. So you already know how to do all of this stuff, you know? Like, this is one of the things I love the most about teaching, is that it allows you to re-examine things and learn where you can recycle stuff that you already know. Now you probably know A minor pentatonic all over the fretboard, hopefully. And now you can make the realisation that over a Lydian context you can use that there too. Okay, so in relation to F, we're playing off the major third here. Okay, so whatever key you're in, if you're F Lydian, find the major third, which is A. Or if we were in C Lydian, we could find the E. If we were in A flat Lydian, we could go C minor pentatonic. And play the things that we already know how to do. Now I also already knew from listening to people like Pat Metheny and various others that over an F Lydian case, for instance, you can also use E minor pentatonic. So go start on the major 7, come back a semitone from your root note. Because if you look at all the notes that you've got there, you've got the major 7, the 9, the 3, the sharp 11, and the 6, so there's lots of colour in there. And we've avoided the root note as well, like we were talking about earlier. So how cool is that? The two scales that you learn at the very beginning, E minor pentatonic and A minor pentatonic, can both be used over this perhaps new situation. Now when I'm teaching, generally, rather than kind of just lecturing at a student about a certain topic or whatever, I like to generate this sense that we're working through things together, you know, from scratch, from the beginning. That way it allows me to constantly relearn stuff and check that I actually know what I'm talking about and make new discoveries that way, you know. And that's what I love about this particular journey here is it's allowed me to do that, and it's allowed me to make new connections and new discoveries that will make profound impacts on my own playing as well. And it happens all the time. Every time I teach this stuff, it's I make new discoveries and new connections, and that's really exciting to me, I find. So go and share this stuff with somebody else. Try and explain it to somebody else, and you will understand it better yourself.